who's come over from Japan, where there is a growing anti-nuclear movement, and she's going to speak to us a bit about what's happening in Japan. So can we have a really big, loud welcome?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, this is my first speech ever, so it's not going to be really good, but I'll try my best. I'm going to just read out my script. On my way from London to Hinkley, I was looking out of the car window on the motorway. I saw familiar views with low trees, bush, wooden fences and ships, all that stuff. I was feeling that this is my home country, then I thought of my another home country, which is Japan. Sentimental feelings hit me. I haven't been there for over 3 years. After the Fukushima disaster, I hesitated to visit my family and friends in Tokyo because some parts of Tokyo are highly contaminated. Especially, it is not easy to find a radioactive free food without good knowledge to find where they are. Mountains and forests in Japan are beautiful, but they are more contaminated than anywhere else. I feel I've lost home I used to know, and I don't want to lose my another home, which is the UK, for the same man-made mistake. Land and people can recover from tsunami and earthquakes, but after a nuclear disaster, nothing gets back to its original state. Having been educated and worked in both Japan and the UK, I know people are the same everywhere, especially when it comes to politics and money. What's happening in Japan can happen here. Mass media and the government are busy showing us what they want us to believe in order to protect their interests rather than public interest. The same old story. So I gathered information through independent media and individuals in Japan. This is what I've found. Lots of food across Japan is contaminated. In order to sell food produced from contaminated areas, they, for instance, mix them with clean, safe food secretly. People are encouraged to eat food produced from Tohoku region to support farmers there. Many people are still living in the high contaminated areas that should have been evacuated. Children and pregnant women are particularly very vulnerable to radiation. They need to be evacuated immediately. 43.7% of Fukushima children aged between 0 and 18 have abnormalities in their thyroid. The figure rises to 54% for girls aged between 6 and 15. The figure is under 1% for children elsewhere. In the capital, there are many children who were not allowed to take an echo test to check their thyroid. Hospitals in Japan are told by the authorities to refuse to diagnose people from Fukushima. One mother from Fukushima told us. Apparently, there will also be more leukemia cases very soon. There are more irrational human acts and government lies after Fukushima. Even a very nationalist newspaper called Mainichi reported 71% of the population in Japan were against reopening of Oi nuclear reactor after entire land had gone nuke-free. But the government forced its way through and the Oi reactor got reopened, as many of you know. Also, according to some local residents of Fukushima, several hundreds to 1,000 people died at home within 20 kilometers from the nuclear power plant. Their home wasn't damaged by earthquakes, no tsunami reached their home. The corpses were highly radio-contaminated. The locals believed that they were killed as they were exposed to high-level radiation. But the government reported that they died from tsunami then exposed to radiation. The Japanese government is creating and burning radioactive debris across Japan. The project serves just like chemtrail. Local government and vendors are after big money which the project provides. Well, The good side is that there are more and more people who are aware of what's going on. These people never used to talk about politics or go to protest. Now there are anti-nuclear protests every week all over Japan. But just like the UK, where unfortunately some organizers are allegedly bribed by the police, some organizers of the main rally, which takes place outside the Prime Minister's office, work for and publish books with an advertising company which signed a contract with the government for monitoring nuclear power related information online. This includes censoring anti-nuclear campaigners, SNS accounts and blogs. A lot of campaigners left the rally and are now protesting in small groups outside the US Embassy and the other Japanese ministries.
To them! Power to them!
Why the US Embassy? That's because the state is said to be behind the Japanese nuclear industry. Soon after the Japanese government announced that they would cut all the nuclear power plants by 2030, the US government requested them to take down the policy. Now the Japanese government is back to square one. As a big alliance of the US, just like Japan, the UK can see the same consequence. But Japanese anti-nuclear campaigners are making a slow but steady change. It's a difficult fight, but we must continue in order to protect children, our future. Well, unfortunately, my sister died from an asthma attack when she was a child, and my another sister was diagnosed with leukemia a few years ago. And I don't want you to experience the same sadness and loss and feeling. And there are more. Unfortunately, there's one serious new nuclear accident every 12 years, namely 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima. The more the nuclear power plants, the higher the probability of the disasters. Trust me, I have a degree in statistics. So who wants nuclear power? Not us. Thank you.
That was very moving and informative, because of course none of us really know. One of the horrible things about a nuclear accident and its involvement with the state, and the fact that nobody wants to tell you how bad it is that we know there will be cover-ups. We know that they won't want people to know. That's why there's so much confusion, for instance, about how many people died at Chernobyl, because no one's quite sure, because no one knows where the figures are. That was very moving, and now I think this is also potentially very moving. We've got someone who was at Fukushima and survived, and is here to speak to us now for a few minutes. So give another warm and respectful welcome for Gavin Allwright.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am a nuclear refugee. I don't look very Japanese, but my wife is Japanese, and we built a house only 10 kilometers from Itatemura, which is a compulsory evacuation zone. My area is actually only 16 times the background radiation. So, according to the Japanese government, that's safe. If it's 20, you better move. Today, I don't want to get too political. I just want to tell you our story and talk about not the children, but my children. And then I'd like to draw a very important point about the fact that Fukushima isn't over yet. First of all, on the day of March 12th, we had, my wife's family were missing in the tsunami. Unfortunately, we lost a few of them. Her mother and father survived, but they were trapped for a while. We didn't know what was happening. We got we got a knock on the window from a friend who had a working radio. Unfortunately, mine had broken, saying a power station had exploded. Now, I thought it was the oil-fired power station not too far away. A little bit further down, it was Fukushima. Within about 30 seconds, I had the children in the car. It was raining, a little bit like this morning. We were heading for the mountains on about a third of a tank of gas. We got to the mountains to the west. All of the roads in the mountains were out because we're talking I think the fourth heaviest earthquake in human history, and it took out roads everywhere. We finally got over those mountains, and I got my children out. We waited 4 days to get news that my wife's mother and father had survived. I then took the children down to Osaka and we got them out of the country. My youngest son has very serious respiratory issues. About 4 weeks later, I went back. And for the last year and a half, I've been working on the reconstruction and also been witness to the terrible ripping apart of a lot of the community. We received hate mail for leaving. People were so emotional about the fact that we've been community leaders and we left people. We left them there to suffer their fate. I went back to try and help with the reconstruction. Unfortunately, I probably should paint myself yellow. I have a heavy dose of radioactive contamination myself. I will be radioactive at least for the next 150 years. My children won't be. And unfortunately, we can't say that about... we can't say that about my daughter and my son's fellow students in their school. We get letters quite regularly from them saying, when you're coming back, it's safe. Their parents are in denial. Who wouldn't be? To live every day breathing that poison, you'd have to be in denial. And my friends are. My family is over there. My daughter's first sentence in English, she wasn't very good at English when she came over to England. And I asked her, I said, what are you going to say when the children ask you why you came to this school in England? And she kind of pulled herself up tall and she said, Daddy, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say, I came to England because a nuclear power station exploded and the poison came into our house. So I had to leave. That was the longest sentence my 10-year-old had ever said in English. And that will stay with me for the rest of my life. I'm not going to talk any more about the hardships that we've faced. We lost our house, we lost our organic farm. It was a house we'd spent 2.5 years building ourselves. A lot of people have lost a hell of a lot more over there. But one thing I would like to say is, as I mentioned before, this is going to be my last point. Fukushima isn't over. It's not even nearly over. There's one point that is not getting into the national media, let alone the international media. The spent fuel ponds on reactor 4, on top of reactor 4 alone, and this is regardless of reactor 1, 2 and 3, they hold enough cesium, they hold 85 times the cesium that was released in Chernobyl. If there is an earthquake between a 6 and a 7, the one that we had was a 9. If there is another earthquake and an active fault has opened up under the reactors themselves, that will fall down. There will be a radiological fire that this world has never seen before. Japan will be uninhabitable. The east coast of China will be uninhabitable. Korea, Taiwan will be uninhabitable, and the majority of the west coast of the United States will have to be evacuated. That is China, the second largest economy, Japan, the third largest economy, California, the fourth largest economy in the world, will be stopped in a day. We're talking about a huge risk that we're taking. Nothing is being done for it. Nobody is listening. So please, that is my political point. Please stop nuclear power everywhere and support the Fukushima people.
I think we should have had that at the beginning of the rally, really. So that everyone really heard that, and I hope that someone was recording that on microphones, because I think that is what the people of Bridgwater need to hear, to actually understand what it would be like if that was to happen here. And you have to really connect with it to get it, because we live in a world, don't we, where you just hear stuff and you don't connect with it. And actually, not only that there could be an off-site emergency, but interestingly enough, that here in West Somerset, and we hope it doesn't happen, there has been a tidal wave before. 2,000 people were killed here in 1607. I know that's a long time ago, but it's something that can happen in the Somerset levels, and Hinkley C is being built on the edge of that potential. Now, lastly, in terms of our main speakers, and then we're just going to have a quick roundup. Don't go until the end now, because don't. Or else we'll come round and publish you on the internet. No, we won't. Listen, now I'd like to have a very warm welcome for another international campaigner who's going to speak to us about the massive people's movement against nuclear energy in India. Please welcome Raminder Kaur.
In Bridgwater. I bring greetings and messages of support and solidarity from India. Although personally I came from Brighton, I also bring messages of support from Brighton, but not as many, unfortunately. Regarding India, you've all heard probably about Kudankulam, the nuclear power station that's been built along with the Russians, Rosatom. Now, it's on the point of being commissioned. There are so many problems with it. It's on a seismic fault. There was a tsunami there in 2004. If we don't get another Fukushima in Fukushima itself, it's most likely to happen here. Fuel loading is going ahead without all the international regulations and even national regulations being followed. Loads of people, and I'm talking about 1.5 million people within 30 kilometres radial zone around the nuclear power station, have been protesting. They've been protesting on the road, on the sea. They've been standing in the sea for hours on end. Women are at the forefront. Children at the age of 5 are radicalised. They are also singing songs against the nuclear power station. If you go there, it is so inspiring. I mean, you think, wow, look at all these people. But still, the government is not listening. The story is the same as it is here. The politicians and the corporates are still going ahead. We're talking about foreign companies as well as Indian companies who are coming in to do nuclear trade because they can't do it so easily in Europe and America. It's encouraging to hear Kate from CND talk about the fact that they can't build nuclear power stations in America so easily now. But they're just exporting their businesses. They're exporting them overseas. Now, if there is a radioactive disaster or nuclear disaster, it's going to affect everyone. It's not just going to get confined to one nation. When we had Chernobyl, idiots like Mitterrand was saying, oh, the cesium stopped at the border of France. It didn't get into France. This is the kind of stuff that's going on in India. Even after the Fukushima disaster, the politicians were denying that there's a nuclear disaster in Fukushima. These are the guys who are behind the construction of the Kadankam nuclear power station. Even a 5-year-old knows more than the average politician, and I'm talking about India and Britain. When you get nuclear power construction, you also get repression. You get repression of the truth, you get repression of people, and you get repression of the environment. A lot of these new nuclear power stations are being built on the coast. Hinkley is the same, as is Kadankam, and there's so many around Japan. And it's the coastal waters that are going to be affected. They don't know barriers. We will be all contaminated if this goes on. There are going to be so many more nuclear power stations being built in places like India. We can't even talk about China because information doesn't get out. But at least information about India is getting out. And it's going to be a major problem if they're going to go ahead. At the moment, 2.5% of the Indian sort of national grid is through nuclear power. We're hoping to not only double it or triple it, but go up to 25% by 2050. So this is involving about the construction of about 20 new nuclear power stations over the next few decades. So this is a major, major problem. It's not just going to contaminate Indian environment, it's also going to affect the coastal zones, etc. And that's not only, it's not only radioactive disasters or nuclear disasters we need to worry about. We need to worry about daily emissions, the radionuclide emissions that come out every day. They will affect all those people who are living in the area. And we will not see the effects immediately. It will take decades, it will take generations. But every study has shown that people who live within a certain zone around a nuclear power station, or cases of leukemia, cancer and other diseases have increased. And this is something that people in the nuclear authorities and in governments who support them don't want to let out, don't want ordinary people to worry about. And this is something we need to expose. We need more people on our side. We need to make this not just a local struggle but a national struggle and an international one. And we are also organising a public meeting in Parliament, in House of the Commons, on October the 18th to discuss this whole thing, this idiocy about new nuclear power. And I'd add another D to the Ds that have already been discussed regarding the nuclear authorities, and I have to swear now, but it has to be dickhead. At that point, I will stop.
Thanks, Raminda. It's so inspiring when you hear about the international dimension, but it's also so puzzling, isn't it? 70% of the Japanese people say they don't want nuclear. People in India are protesting en masse. I believe it's 90% of the people in Britain who are the Glastonbury coach is going right now. I don't want to announce that because they'll all leave. Right, Glastonbury people, get on the bus, come back on Monday, commit mass trespass. Oops, I've broken my injunction. All right, now, when all that is the case, when populations in this country in polls say they want renewables, and yet we are stuck with a situation where that's being ignored, we know that we have to, yes, say no to nuclear and also say yes to renewables. And what we actually have to do in this country, let's face it, we have to create a political movement that is capable of representing the will of the people, because we don't have it at the moment. Be absolutely clear about that. It's not happening in Parliament, it's happening outside, and we've got to create that movement. We've got to find a way of linking up the interests of people who are in struggle against the cuts and all the rest of it with saying there is a future in renewables, and that's the task I think we've got ahead of us. Right now, to wind up this rally, Camilla, you've got to come up now. I'm going to introduce again Camilla Behrens, who's just going to give us a quick summary of what we need to do. I'd just like to end though by thanking all of you for coming and saying we have had some fantastic speakers today, absolutely brilliant. You know, when you hear all the propaganda, you start to have doubts, don't you? I do. I read the latest piece and I'm like, oh, I don't know. And then I hear someone from Fukushima and I'm like, oh, that's it. That's an absolute idiocy. We just have to stop this. We just got to get that message out. So if you've done any pictures today, if you've recorded anything, get it out on YouTube, get it out on the web, get it out on the community radio. Do that tonight. Make it your priority. Facebook it, link it, and make sure everyone gets a chance to hear it. Here's Camilla.
I'm not going to bore you with any more speaking. I just want to tell you two things very quickly. You're here today as part of a growing movement that is wise and wonderful and is going to be our future and make sure that we're going to be safe and sound. So pat yourselves on the back first of all. The second is that this weekend of protest is part of a rolling programme over the next couple of months to really put pressure on the government in the build-up to this energy bill, which is basically going to sell us all short. It's going to tie us in, handcuff us to the nuclear dream that the government has for the next 100, 200 years. So we've really got to ramp up that dissent, that anti-nuclear feeling really, really fast, really, really hard up to the end of the year. I've given you, quite a lot of you, a pre-prepared letter to send to your MP. If you haven't got one, please take one from the stall that David's got on the left-hand side. And if you can all send it within the next 5 to 10 days, we can make sure that that message is really getting to all the MPs at the same time, so they're all talking about it at the same time. And it's designed to really inform all our MPs, most of them who are completely ignorant about nuclear, as to the real situation. The other thing I really just wanted to point out, if you haven't seen, this is the new alternative to the Bridgwater Mercury. This was compiled solely by Crispin Aubrey. It's his legacy gift to the anti-nuclear movement before he died. And it's a wonderful piece of work and a real tribute to a man with real vision, real courage and real perseverance. So if you haven't seen it, please take one with you. It's not really for us, it's for people who don't really understand what's going on. It's a general piece, but it's a wonderful statement, it's a wonderful tribute to Crispin, so please take one with you. Thank you very much. Yes, and please, take it to your communities and please let them know about it. Please also keep a check on the Stop the Nuclear website. Keep communicating with us. Give us your email address so that we can put you on our mailing list and keep you informed of the programme. There's going to be a mass lobby of Parliament in November, and we'd love you to all come along to that. There's going to be lots of other things going on. Please keep in touch. Thank you, Camilla.